On May 15th, US President Donald Trump made a speech in Qatar. He claimed China copied the design of the US F-22 fighter jet, stating,
And I don't know if you know it, but you know who copied it? China. They copied it. They copied our design. But they won't be able to copy our engines too quickly or anything else. So
he also announced plans to develop a super F-22, describing it as a truly modern Raptor fighter jet. This statement renewed attention on fifth-generation fighter jets. A further comment was that, "What we know is that because of the espionage efforts, China's J-20 is more advanced than it otherwise would be." This assertion was made by James Anderson, the acting US Deputy Secretary of Defense during the previous Trump administration. This assessment is supported by a comprehensive intelligence chain rather than political rhetoric. Experts state that, contrary to China's claims of independent development, the J-20 appears to be a stealth fighter. It is constructed by systematically copying the F-22's design framework, parameters, and specifications since the 1990s. The US judicial system was confirmed that China's military-industrial complex obtained F-22 data from espionage. A notable example is the Su Bing case. Beginning of 2009, Su Bing collaborated with Chinese military hackers to infiltrate companies such as Boeing and Lockheed Martin. They stole design documents, blueprints, and test data for projects including the F-22, F-35, and C-17. It was later proven that Su Bing had directed these hacking operations, managed the stolen data, and reported directly to the Chinese military. In emails, he stated the data would allow us to rapidly catch up with the US levels, and for China to stand easily on the giant's shoulders. In 2014, Su Bing was arrested in Canada and later extradited to the United States. He pleaded guilty in 2016 in a federal court. The US Department of Justice described it as a national-level cyber espionage case. Extensive evidence shows the J-20 shares many design similarities with the F-22. Its aerodynamic profile, weapon bay, stealth nozzles, and flight control system closely resembles those of the F-22. As confirmed by US judicial findings and technical analysis, the J-20's core was influenced by leaked F-22 data. Several key technological developments coincided with the timeline of the Su Bing case. Experts later observed that China's military-industrial implemented strict secrecy measures to conceal this technology transfer. Academic researchers, mid-level military personnel, and national database were kept unaware. China began its fifth-generation fighter development in the 1990s under the code name JXX Project. It was later designated as Project 718. China imported the full production line of the Russian Su-27 to learn structural manufacturing techniques while closely monitoring the US F-22 Raptor project from its first flight. The F-22 prototype flew in 1990 and entered service in 2005. The Chinese military studied the F-22 in detail, including subtle aspects such as the angle changes of the belly nozzles. They replicated even minor control surface adjustments. It was observed that when the F-22 has a supersonic cruise capability, the J-20 would be designed with supercruise as a standard feature. If the F-22 carries 6 AIM-120 missiles in its weapons bay, the J-20 is configured to carry 6 PL-15 missiles. Even the avionics layout and landing gear hinge angles show evidence of replication. During the 1982 Falklands War, the research department of the Nanjing Naval Command College tracked British operations continuously. Thus, the F-22 project was monitored closely by China. By around 2004, China had largely localized and absorbed Su-27 technologies and recognized that relying on third-generation fighters was insufficient to match the F-22. The fifth-generation fighter program, XXJ project, was formally launched, focusing on replicating the Raptor while maintaining secrecy. From the outset, the program aimed at covert replication rather than independent development. To avoid detection by the US, the J-20 project was treated as a military-industrial black box. Chengdu Aircraft Industry Group constructed a fully enclosed supersonic wind tunnel, FL-62. Universities and research institutes nationwide were cut off from external internet access and communication outside the military. References to J-20 or aircraft were prohibited in documents, replaced by terms such as Device B with serial numbers. A research of aviation academic database from 2000 to 2010 revealed no publications on J-20 aerodynamics. Even aeronautics professors reported being unaware of the project. Each J-20 test flight is executed as a counter-surveillance operation precisely timed. The Chinese military analyzed U.S. satellite imaging schedules. Flights were scheduled during peak midday sunlight and weather conditions with thin cloud and geothermal disturbances to distort infrared imagery. Test flight zones are restricted to the Chengdu area. Flight altitude and path deliberately avoided synthetic aperture radar coverage. The operation resembled a controlled hide-and-seek effort. A former U.S. East Asia intelligence advisor noted that while U.S. agencies were aware of the project, they only realized its progress once the aircraft was in operation. They admitted they were about 10 years behind. Notably, the Chinese military itself reportedly lacked full knowledge of the overall program. The J-20 used a puzzle piece approach where contractors receive isolated components without access to the full design. For example, the radar dome manufactured in Xi'an was labeled as High-Speed Wind Tunnel B Dome, and the landing gear produced at a southern factory was coded as Airdrop Test Component. Final assembly occurs only at Chengdu Aircraft Industry Group's highly secure Red Line facility. To divert external attention, the Chinese Communist Party employed an information smokescreen strategy by heavily promoting the J-10C and J-16 fighters. It is observed that they were using these newer models to continue public perception. As a result, several Western think tanks were misled and intelligence agencies misjudged the situation, all the while China's actual fifth-generation fighter, the J-20, quietly took to the skies. Many have questioned how the United States could be unaware of the J-20 project given its scale. The answer is that the US was aware but did not realize the depth of the technological copying or the rapid progress of the aircraft. By the time the J-20 took flight, U.S. production of the F-22 had long ceased, while the F-35 was still undergoing technical fixes. The U.S. military was effectively caught off guard by China's combination of secrecy and intelligence-driven replication. But despite the black box secrecy and imitation of the F-22's design, the J-20 has become a hybrid that does not fully meet expectations. It looks like a Raptor, weighs like a heavy bomber, performs like a third-generation fighter, and has flight control comparable to a manual transmission. The canard wings at the J-20's nose mark the first sign of aerodynamic compromise. The F-22 uses an inherently unstable flight control system relying on advanced computing for real-time adjustments. China was unable to replicate this flight control technology and instead installed canard wings as a forward stabilizer to enable flight. While this allowed the aircraft to fly, it introduced drawbacks. The canard wings act as radar reflectors, compromising stealth and capabilities. They also obstruct the pilot's forward and upward view. This prevents the PL-10 missiles from locking onto targets overhead. In low-speed dogfights, the J-20 struggles with maneuverability likened to a gas tank drifting in the sky. It is unable to accelerate or turn effectively, leaving it vulnerable. Experts comment that flight control limitations cannot be compensated for by engine thrust. The F-22's F-119 engine has a thrust-to-weight ratio of 11.5, and the F-35's F-135 reaches 19.5 tons. The J-20 uses the WS-10C turbofan engine, which produces about 14 tons of thrust. This is insufficient for the demanding performance requirements. There is the WS-15 Dream engine claimed to generate 18 tons of thrust. However, as of 2025, it remains in extended testing cycles, unable to complete 1,000 flight hours without major overhauls, with a lifespan inferior of US F-16 training parts. Regarding the engine nozzle design, the F-22 features a flat stealth nozzle with a low infrared signature. In contrast, the J-20's nozzle is a cylindrical and flared outward. This produces a bright infrared signature during afterburner use, making it highly visible in night combat. The avionics systems on the J-20 is concentrated in the aircraft's nose, housing radar, distributed electro-optical sensors, infrared detectors, and laser rangefinders. Despite the number of sensors, they are incompatible due to the differences in protocols and output formats. This forces pilots to operate multiple unconnected systems simultaneously, performing system integration mentally. In terms of weapons system, the J-20 carries PL-15 medium-range and PL-10 short-range missiles, appearing capable on paper. But there are practical limitations. The PL-10 is stored inside weapons bay, requiring bay doors to open and limiting fire angles with a delayed response. The aircraft lacks an internal cannon, restricting close combat options. Without thrust vectoring, the J-20 cannot perform aerial maneuvers such as rapid turns like the F-22. If the flight control system fails, the pilot must manually correct the aircraft's trajectory, relying heavily on physical effort. A candid statement from a J-20 test pilot during an official CCTV interview acknowledged that the J-20's low-altitude maneuvering is inferior to that of the J-10. The J-10 is a third-generation fighter, while the J-20 is marketed as a fifth-generation. The fact that a fifth-generation fighter underperforms a third-generation model suggests a mismatch in classification. Even the stealth capability fails to fully support the J-20's fifth-generation designation. The F-22 has a radar cross-section (RCS) of approximately 0.0001 square meters, effectively undetectable. The F-35's RCS is about 0.001 square meters and is categorized as black hole stealth. The J-20's RCS range from 0.05 to 0.1 square meter, comparable to partially stealthy or small transport aircraft levels. This is due to reflective canard wings, exposed air intakes, and gaps in weapons bay doors. Additionally, the unstable stealth coating degrade after several flights and require frequent repainting. At the 2021 China International Aviation and Aerospace Exhibition, the J-20 was publicly displayed performing a 360-degree turn lasting 24 seconds. By comparison, the F-22 completes the same maneuver in 17 seconds, and the retired F-4 Phantom, a third-generation fighter, also performs a turn in a similar time frame. The J-20 turn rate of approximately 15 degrees per second barely meets third-generation fighter standards. This indicates that it may be better categorized as the third generation plus disguised with stealth features. Furthermore, this performance was achieved in a photo shoot mode with reduced fuel and weapons outload to minimize weight and to present an impressive image. Whether the J-20 is effective in combat remains uncertain, but it is clear that it is designed to project the image of a fifth-generation fighter. Another familiar aircraft appeared on the stage, the J-35, also known as the FC-31. It closely resembles the F-35 and is promoted as a domestic carrier-based fighter. But military enthusiasts reacted with surprise rather than admiration. Many questioned, wait, isn't this just a copy of the F-35? The DSI air intake design is directly copied. The nose contours, cockpit angles, and the tail nozzle structures are reproduced down to the pixel level. Even details such as nozzle edge and fairing angles match precisely. Some foreign military observers have jokingly called it the F-35's beta version, a Chinese prototype. Even the takeoff posture mirrors that of the F-35, but the J-35 faces operational challenges. It cannot operate effectively from aircraft carriers. Its stealth coating deteriorates after deployment at sea. This requires frequent touch-ups following training exercises in the South China Sea. The arresting hook has repeatedly failed, preventing standard carrier landings. The avionics data linked in incompatible and does not support sensor fusion and furthermore networked strike capabilities. Consequently, the J-35 is not a match for the F-35 and cannot even be considered a reliable backup. Spectators comment that it is essentially a lower-spec, glued-together version of the F-35, primarily intended for display, photography, and presentations. Many suggest that China's military-industrial approach here resembles a student submitting an assignment with a polished cover and neat table of contents, but with content largely copied and pasted. Beijing can copy blueprints and replicate structures to produce an aircraft, but it cannot replicate the system that allows for failure and encourage correction. In the US, the military-industrial system's greatest strength is its fault-tolerant mechanism. Pilots can report issues openly without penalty. Software bugs lead to engineers working overtime but not being blamed. System failures trigger formal upgrade projects rather than cover-ups. In this system, whoever identifies a problem first becomes the hero. This explains why the F-35 continues to improve even without combat experience. Each deployment, interception, and training exercise becomes an opportunity for system optimization. In contrast, within China's military-industrial system, problems signals risk rather than opportunity. Flight control failures are attributed by pilot error. Radar frequency hopping issues are blamed on factory interface mismatches. Missile misses are dismissed due to insufficient simulation conditions. Anyone who reports problems risks accusations of leaking secrets. Anyone proposing modifications may be accused of undermining morale. Those suggesting optimization face suspicion of insubordination. The result is a system where pilots hesitate to request upgrades for fear of causing trouble. Engineers avoid suggesting changes to evade accountability. Commanders refrain from reporting faults to protect their positions. The entire system effectively encourages only positive reporting. War is not won by perfection, but by the ability to rapidly adapt and continuously evolve despite imperfections. China's military-industrial complex has copied the crown, but forcibly placed it on a head unwilling to admit mistakes. Flight capability alone is insufficient. Acknowledging errors and the ability to improve are critical. Currently, both China and the US are developing sixth-generation fighters. There seems to be a full-scale clash of differing institutional styles. The US approach to sixth-generation fighters is categorized by transparent strategy, with the Air Force Secretary personally detailing performance parameters, combat radius, and wingman capabilities. This transparency is not due to modesty, but institutional constraints. Congress oversees budget and cuts funding if claims are exaggerated. Shareholders react negatively if weapon performance falters, impacting stock prices. Media scrutiny punishes inflated claims with negative headlines. The military understands that revealing all details leave no margins for error during combat. In contrast, China follows a strategy of strategic silence. When a new aircraft flies, there is no official announcement, no image, no specification. Information is limited to model releases and leaked photos, with parameters often based on online speculation and enthusiast conjecture. This strategy serves three purposes. Number one, internal propaganda to foster the perception that China has surpassed the US military. Number two, internal pressure through performance targets and deadlines. Number three, external confusion to maintain strategic ambiguity about China's true capabilities. Technical data reflect this divergence. The United States provides verified minimum performance values. For example, the F-47's combat radius is officially recorded at 1,800 kilometers. These values are based on actual testing. In contrast, Chinese figures are often speculative estimates generated by military enthusiasts online. Chengdu Aircraft Industry Group reportedly claims a combat radius of 2,200 kilometers, but given China's history of exaggeration, this figure likely requires a significant reduction, around 40%. Previously, the J-20 was claimed to reach a maximum speed of Mach 3, but officially announcement later capped it at Mach 2. Therefore, recent online rumors about full-spectrum stealth should be viewed cautiously, as the aircraft may require repainting or maintenance after limited flights. The key issue is not just these technical differences, but what the development of sixth-generation fighters reveals about the strategic character of the two countries. The United States is developing sixth-generation aircraft to fill the capability gap left by the F-22's retirement. It represents a defensive succession. China's development aims to gain early strategic positioning and serve as an offensive tool. Beijing's statement that we do not commit to renouncing the use of force to unify Taiwan can be interpreted as we reserve the right to initiate conflict. Military action against Taiwan constitutes aggression. Targeting Tokyo threatens Japan. Harassment near Luzon infringes on the Philippines. Global concerns is not merely about the Chinese military's growing strength, but about the absence of rules, checks, and limits on that strength. Beijing can replicate structures, but cannot replicate the underlying spirit. It can steal blueprints, but not the systemic framework. It can paint a facade of glory but cannot hide underlying anxieties. The J-20 can fly, but it remains confined within China's traditional form over function engineering approach. The future of aerial warfare will not be determined by which aircraft most resembles a fifth-generation fighter, but by which can operate effectively in the evolving combat environment. Ultimately, the victor will not be the fastest flyer, but the one who can continuously adapt and improve.